Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome back to another Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It is a pleasure to finally be back on the air. We took a week off due to sickness that we have been having run throughout the crew. And it was kind of a last minute decision throughout the week to just say, hey, screw it. Why don't we go ahead and record next week? Especially since we didn't go to war with Iran. I mean, if we'd been in war with Iran, who knows when we'd be back, you know. With that being said, please welcome our host for tonight, Mr. Christopher Hanna.
I'm the host?
And
things are changing.
Voice the Skeptic. How are you tonight, sirs?
I'm good. I'm just deflating my tires from getting off the road for 6 hours. We met the new nephew in the family. My sister-in-law had herself a nice, healthy little boy, a little early, 6 pounds-ish, but pretty awesome. Finally got to meet him. The family's relatively healthy. As soon as we get there, my oldest threw a 102 temperature. So we went into quarantine and went and hid at Nana and Papa's house. But overall, it was a pretty good weekend.
Yeah, that kind of sucks your kid got, sick there towards the end.
We're not going to be healthy until June. I've just decided I'm going to just make that the rule that when summer hits, then we will finally, unfortunately, be healthy.
Yeah, that does suck. But that's what happens when you have kids at that age, Yeah, I don't think we get much of a choice throughout their earlier careers, especially because they go to school. You're in a new environment. There's a lot of that going around this year. So with that being said, welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics. We are on episode 204.
Oh,
yeah, crazy, right? It's kind of winding by, going down. Can't believe we've been doing this for 4 years now with this show. So cheers to Cellar Door Skeptics and those of us that have stayed around this long. We will be going back to recording on a regular schedule now. Now that I have to start traveling again for work. So we will be back to our Sunday nights. So you could go ahead and look to see that every week right here on Facebook for now. We can migrate you all over. We'll get you all over on YouTube. But for now, we're on Facebook.
So yeah, just earmark us down for whatever you do for your Sunday night calm down. Because sometimes our shows are educational and relatively calm, and sometimes we just want to do a panic. So it's a 50-50 shot. You just flip your coin like Two-Face, and hopefully you'll land on the good side.
Yeah, it's kind of like gotta pay your coin to The Witcher, Isn't that how that goes?
Yeah,
I saw the coin to The Witcher.
I finished that series. I actually I binged it towards the end of the holiday weekend, and I enjoyed it. I still can't take the Henry Cavill out of Superman, but no matter what, so I watched Superman playing the role of the Witcher, which is interesting. But other than that, it's a good series. I was expecting decent quality, and it met most of those. The very first fight scene, the opening fight scene for the show, was a bit cheeseball and a bit under graphic. But overall, the show, I was impressed with how adult it was. I was thoroughly surprised at how much nudity and stuff like that. Like it was designed for adults. They weren't pulling punches for children, for young people and children, which sometimes you just need that. Sometimes you need somebody to say, we're not going to go for the broad audience. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's weird because my son's old enough, and we've been playing the Witcher game, right? The Witcher 3 game.
Oh man, that's a weird thing.
And he wanted to watch this TV show, and so now we've been watching it together. So here's that.
Yeah, nude scenes with Dad. I remember a few of the first ones of that. I was like, ah!
Yeah, he hasn't said anything. He just sits there stoically like this, and I don't say anything, and we just
He
kinda
doesn't move, but
past it.
inside his brain is exploding.
Yeah, he
because
doesn't know what to do.
not so much that. I mean, all of the humans that show body parts in that on that series were pretty good looking humans. They picked some pretty good ones, and so it's some of those things where it's just like a decent amount of diversity as well as adult themes. It was a cool show. I was surprised. I went in kind of expecting to be able to Grinch on it, and I kind of walked out thinking, well, I'll check out the second season, which usually doesn't happen with me.
Yeah. Well, for the first segment tonight, we want to talk about what happened to the war in Iran. So, boys, I don't know if you've been keeping up with the news lately, but I know I sat on edge at work all day that day saying, hey, hold on, what's going to happen here? What's going on? So, boys, where were you at when he had his announcement, and where you were shocked that he didn't decide to retaliate back?
Yeah, I was just working, and I get the alerts on my phone, and it shows that pretty much it's a win for him.
Yep, it is.
It's a win. He called him on their shit, and they flicked a little booger at him, and he's like, "That's all you got? That's it? Your mother." And he just called it a day. He's like, "That's what I thought." Kind of one of those deals.
Yeah. And, my buddy and I were texting back and forth, right? Because I've got kids that are, draft age. Not that would ever happen, but I do have my kids. And boys, your son is right at that same age too, isn't he? Because your kid's not in college yet, is he?
He's what? He's in college.
Oh, is he? Okay. So he might not be touched with it anyway then. But they are, it is a very close, age group for that, right? And so I was paying attention. My buddy was also paying attention. And he goes, hey, did you hear this rumor? And I was like, what rumor? And he goes, well, rumor has it that what happened is there were some back channels. And again, this is all unverified stuff. But I guess when they have back channels, they go through like Switzerland to have conversations with other countries they're about to go to war with or having issues with it, And supposedly they went through Saudi Arabia this time. Don't know why or how, but they did.
Naturally.
Yeah.
That's Trump's homeboys.
Yeah.
He touched the orb and got all the balls or whatever it is.
And so that's what he was telling me about, is he was telling me that they essentially what was happening is that they said, here's what you can do to strike back. This is it. So supposedly, and again, this is just rumor, they had full knowledge that the military base was going to be attacked and that they were going to miss it, and that Trump's going to have to bite his tongue now and say, we're done. That way nobody gets into a conflict. So did anybody else hear that rumor?
Yeah, I kind of heard the rumor, and that's kind of in line with my suspicions of what actually happened. So what I genuinely suspected is that we always talk about the blind and infinite faith of the Islamic religion and their countries, the state, the Islamic State religions. And this is a really interesting test for that, to see, are they willing to blindly go into jihad? They threw the red flag over their mosque, and they told their people, this isn't the house of war, and we are going to get our retribution. And they spittled their little spittle over the wall, and they what I mean? It's kind of like saying, like, will you stand in front of the Mack truck with a sledgehammer, and will you blindly hold true that your faith is more powerful and a miracle will happen, or something like that? And this is an example of rational thinking from state electors that are not blindly following the tenets of their faith to fight to the death for the essentially what is considered an attack on Islam for a lot of those people. This is rational war making, and these people made a political decision, and it's not entirely a surprise. And it surprises me a little bit that the Saudis are involved, but these are the kinds of things that I was kind of expecting to happen, and it's one of the things that frustrated me the most about the entire thing, is that I honestly didn't know whether or not their faith would overcome their reason. But I'm happy to see that it did overcome their reason. But unfortunately, as I said the last time we talked about this, it is a chalked up win for the president. He called them on their bluff, and that's one of the things. It's really easy to call someone on a bluff when you have the entire bank.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you're playing a poker game and you're the house, you can call someone their bluff. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. Even in Iran's worst case, they attacked us. They would do some damage. People would lose their lives, but it's not even registerable compared to what the United States could unleash on them. Like we are so much bigger and more powerful. So like it is like someone calling the house calling his bluff, and we have to say that he did win. He got whoever told him to do that, like whatever part of his strategic staff told him that was an option, and he took it. It wasn't a bad decision.
Well, I would disagree with you on that one. I don't think that it was a good decision to make that assassination attempt.
No, this isn't that. This is just the strategics. If you're looking at who wins strategically, who gains power and gains face, he politically did win and gain face, and it sucks. Like it's a horrible thing that he did, and we talked about it that we wouldn't do it. But if you chalk up wins and losses, like I guarantee you, Trump does. He probably has a chalkboard that he puts his little scratch marks on, and he will park it down into a chalk win. And I guarantee his entire base will too. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna eat that shit up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there was a New York Times article that came out that talked about the other thing that the Iran promised. Right, Iran essentially said that they're going to now start kicking U.S. forces out of the region. They're not telling us what that means. There's nothing where, the Supreme Leader has come on saying, I'm going to do exactly this. Yeah. In reality, we all know they're going to start pushing that. And like we talked about last time, did Gaddafi, did he want to be a martyr? Is that some of what Iran's, thing was, is that at some point, we put this martyr on the board, we can reinvigorate new troops to go after the U.S. I mean,
there's a lot of people that I don't know how much you guys know about the history of the U.S. Basically interference in Iraq and Iran, and mostly in the United States in the 50s and in the 70s. We know we helped overthrow democratically elected leaders in the 50s, and then we were part and parcel of the driving forces behind why the Ayatollah took the United States embassy and held those captives for over a year. Like the United States infiltration and basically interference in their country has made the history of people not liking the United States, and this is another chalk mark for them to the young people in the country who've been brought up basically seeing the United States as a foe. This is the United States assassinating who is essentially a military leader in their country. Like even if it was somebody that we all disagree with as far as a military leader, so like the Secretary of State or somebody went somewhere and was assassinated, like we wouldn't like the fact that person we completely and totally disagree with was killed, but we would still react negatively to that just because that's an American citizen killed abroad without any warning, and usually diplomats are immune. So like this kind of thing reinforces a lot of the sad stereotypes that the Arab Peninsula in general has towards the United States being this big bad guy who's a rogue state, according to Chomsky. So this just reinforces it.
Yeah, and Trump later came out later and said there was actual claims, there was reasons behind this, there was ways and decisions that we had to make that not everybody got to see, right? It was this closed door deal. What's nice though, and this is the caveat that I see coming out of it, it's not just Democrats that are chastising Trump and his party for this. There's some Republicans that are starting to back this too, saying, hey, you guys had some pretty weird closed door deals, and your drone attack was not just like an Obama drone attack where they were just killing people. Not that that's good, but that's all Obama's stuff did, but on the opposite side of the fence, Trump essentially had a drone strike assassinate somebody, specifically assassinate a specific individual. And there's a lot of
not very good intel as far as we've been told to.
Well, he claims it is.
Yeah, they walked that back. But
consider the source, man.
So I don't know.
Intel
You know,
and Trump
I
should be in the same sentence.
go ahead, boys.
Intel and Trump should not be in the same sentence. That's all I'm saying.
That's very true. So you know, I mean, again, he claimed that they were going to attack American targets. Who knows, right? You know, you don't really know until then. What I'm more surprised with is that the UN hasn't stepped up and made a big deal about this. I'm kind of surprised by that, especially because Trump has threatened and chided the UN for the last 2 years.
I honestly think the UN's scared of him. I do. I think the UN is scared of him. The United States has a history now, even throughout Democratic presidencies, of flat out ignoring UN. What are they? UN resolutions, UN resolutions, and on top of that, the rulings when the United States is basically seen as in the world court as being a unilaterally acting non-backed actor, a bad actor in a lot of cases. They don't. I honestly think that the UN doesn't want to push because they know that the guy who's in office will push back harder than most people would when it comes to this, and he might even hold a grudge and turn it into a big deal. I honestly think that most of the world is trying to see what's going to happen in the next year to see if there's going to be anything major. Because I mean, we are one day, isn't it? January 20th is usually the transition of power day, correct? Isn't it usually when they do transition of power? I believe it's January 20th.
Yeah.
For the next president, it'll be 2021 January 20th, something like that. Yeah, so we are technically 1 year from tomorrow from the transition to whoever is going to be the president for the next 4 years. And if the world thinks that there's a chance that the next person might be more diplomatic and reasonable, they may be waiting for that.
Fair enough. So our next topic, that we have for tonight is a little closer to Hanna and Tanner's home than before. And I'll be interested to hear Boyce's point of view on this, especially because Boyce has openly stated I'm a big Yang person. And if you want to go back, you can hear Boyce and I chide each other a little bit about Yang and Dave Chappelle's association, which I don't agree with. And I think Yang made a misstep there, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. And this is a confrontation that happened, I don't know, what was it, a week ago? Just came up, week and a half ago?
It was released just before the debate.
Yeah. And then on the debate stage, they actually had words that were recorded, and you can hear them. And we're not going to play them because if you haven't heard it by now, it's not worth our time to play it. You can go Google that shit.
Well, it's just like 3 words. It's like, you call me a liar, and he says, "I'm not doing this right now," basically. So, like, because Bernie knew there's a hot mic, and so did Elizabeth. So go,
Hanna, go into what you wanted to cover for this segment.
For this segment, in all reality, I honestly do think that Bernie said it. I don't think he said it in the context that everyone is saying. My assumption is that Bernie was thinking, and kind of what my context that I expect is, if he really did say this, if he is twisting the truth a little bit, is that he probably was thinking, will the country vote for a woman? And I honestly, I voted for a woman last time, and I would love to believe that we have come far enough in this country to vote for a woman. I don't know if that's true. I really honestly don't. Living where I live now, I could tell you, no, they wouldn't. A woman will not win if Ohio was the place that made the decision. And unfortunately, that might be the problem. And I think Bernie was probably saying something like that. Like, if he said it in any way, shape, or form, like he's accused of saying, my assumption is that he was probably thinking not that a woman shouldn't run and a woman could not win. It's that he doesn't probably believe that the country has come far enough forward to do it after seeing how badly they attacked Hillary, who probably one of the most recognizable political characters to ever run for president, and probably one of the most qualified, in all reality, the most time in politics. Whether or not you agree with where she was, if she was too centrist or not, there's a lot of things that would have been easily positive attributes for a man who would have run. And I don't think they would have had the same kind of hit as they did on her. And so, unfortunately, I think if that's the case, if he did say it and Warren is bringing this up out of context or whatever, that would be the situation. Or if Warren in the camp are fabricating this, the only thing that I would say is a possibility is that the person who I believe is the publications controller in her campaign is also tied to the DCCC and a couple of other really big Democratic groups. And there's some questions of whether or not they would be willing to kind of take a chance at throwing Warren under the bus to burn Sanders. And so, in essentially killing two birds with one stone by creating this battle, and people going to someone like Buttigieg or Biden because they're not fighting on the stage, and then Klobuchar has been growing like crazy in the last couple of days because people are like, "Ugh, everybody's fighting." So, but in my opinion, if Sanders did say it, that's the reason he said it. And I honestly, I don't know. I really don't know if he said it or if this is something that Warren fabricated. It's unfortunate that we're this close to the Iowa primary, and we have this big question in the air.
Boyce, how about you?
I think the future is determined by your past. Bernie's record speaks for itself to me. His past actions determine his future expectations. So he has been a significant progressive for about, 40 years. And fought for women's rights.
6,000 years.
He signed the Declaration and shit,
Yeah.
But so I give Elizabeth Warren a whole lot less leeway on this when it's clearly, if you go on that alone, you're like, oh man, that's just a cheap shot. She's taken out of context. I think she looks desperate personally, that she's slipping in the polls. He's rising in the polls. It's become a 2-person race, and it's considered a 2-man race now. The woman is not being included in these upper echelons. So now it's a 2-man race again. Like you're saying, Amy Klobuchar appears to be the safest darling now. And they fixed her bangs and everything, so like it's helped her out. But like she's become like the safer bet. Pete has his problems now with his whole dilemma, and so it's just one of these big jockeying for his last second scramble. And I do believe that there is some Obama staffers on her staff.
Mm-hmm.
There are some DCCC staffers on her staff that could be, manipulating a situation a little bit. Hey, I think it's a good idea if we just remember one time Bernie said this one thing. What if we just left out the first and last sentence and only talk about that middle sentence, and we're gonna have to make a Hail Mary. Let's take them out because because you look at, she is the number 2 behind all the Bernie supporters. Say Bernie's our 1, Elizabeth's 2, and so whoever loses out of those 2 is pretty much winning it.
Yeah,
if all their 2s go across. So as an outsider looking in, I have no interest. If I'm someone that doesn't have any interest in either camp, like I could care less either way type of voter, you just go off Bernie's record that he has way more reputation to back himself out, considering Elizabeth Warren's been called out on a lot of shit for fabricating things in the past about her own personal life or her own personal record. So she just has no credence with me personally. I think Bernie's going to be very careful about what he says. He's a politician, man. He's like, we're not going to do this here. Like it's smart.
So if we go, yeah, it is true. If we go to the record, right? A lot of what was talked about happened during a private meeting, right? So they had a private meeting back last year before they both decided to run for president, claiming, that, hey, we're going to try and keep this civil. But I guess the disagreement came to a head on Tuesday. During the debate, the 2 senators had a cordial exchange in which he wanted to deny the remark about women's electability. And I think if you go back and look at some of Bernie's history, he's actually demonstrated that he has supported women as president. And there is video clips of him over the past 10 years that he has said these things. The problem, though, is, and this is where I would almost pose that question, is the mainstream media making this out to be more than what it needs to be, right? Is this something that they want because it's going to create division? It's going to create strife.
Who does the mainstream media like more? Biden?
Well, some of me says yes to that. You know, some of me almost does say that, right? That they would rather have Biden, or Boyce is bringing Amy up as a safer choice. And if you look at where are they going to go? Where's CNN going to put their, their faith in? And so there's a 538 article that came out where essentially they kind of talk about the different claims. And they said just under a week later, the Warren campaign would be at war with the Bernie campaign over Warren's claims that Sanders told her in a private 2018 meeting that he didn't think a woman could win the 2020 presidential election. Now, what I will say is that Bernie probably did indicate this. Bernie has made missteps in how he pronounces things, how he says things. He still hasn't, endorsed Dave Chappelle yet, but
Bernie can be raw, and that would probably be a raw statement that he would say. That's why I said I can see him saying it, but I honestly don't think it was a direct attack at women. I think it was more like, will this country vote for a woman? And I think he's a pragmatist, and I think that, as ugly as it is, we elected Donald Trump as a country, or the Electoral College did. You have to take those things into consideration as to where we are politically in this country. And it's ugly. And I hate thinking that could be the truth out there, because all three of us here would have no trouble voting for a woman. But there are people out there on the progressive scale who probably would have an issue with that. And it's weird, and I don't understand it. But
yeah. And the other thing the article says is that Bernie has, on the campaign trail, repeatedly stated that he can bring more people into the Democratic Party than other candidates, right?
Yeah.
That probably pushes a lot of buttons, because in fairness, Warren, for the most part, has always been somewhat progressive. She did have her little Republican stint at the beginning. She was a little bit more conservative when she first started.
Like Hillary did the same thing, starting out as a college Republican. I don't understand it.
Yeah. because people thought that was the way to succeed.
Maybe.
But it's where the money's at.
Exactly. There you go. That's where the money's at. And that's what a lot of Bernie's points are. And that's the biggest thing here. But if we look past all that and we kind of go way past this political correctness discussion here, and we actually want to talk about what's going to happen from here, my biggest concern with this whole thing is mainstream media and how the Bernie bros are going to take this, right? Because if the Bernie bros, and this is why I say there's an underlying hint of, discussion here, because if the Bernie bros feed on this national media, or they create their own media and start feeding on it, then what happens there, right? Then we have them attacking the Warren campaign, and the Warren campaign is going to attack back, or people that are supporting, and now you created a divide. Whereas before, if Warren gets it, brings Bernie on in as a vice president, you get to take both camps. Same thing will happen if they were on the same page. Again, for me, for example, I don't need Warren to take Bernie on in as a vice president to support her. Right? She's pretty up there for me as a candidate. 100%. The problem,
I would have no issue with that either.
Huh?
I would have no issue with that either.
So for her to bring Bernie on, she's probably not going to bring a lot more followers,
right,
in this. The only other option here is are they creating a divide to put these two on stage together as a vice president and president to then take and fix that? They're creating a fake war and bringing these people back together again, in the end.
I'm in a bunch of groups that are Michigan Bernie Sanders, and now in Ohio, Michigan region, and those kinds of things. And one of the things that I saw that was promising before the debate was there's a few people who posted, and these things quickly went to the very top in their Reddit groups, is they said on there that all the title said was just, the debates are coming. Please don't react harshly. You can have debates, you can talk about it, but be civil. No matter what happens, don't take the bait. There was all kinds of these posts. all kinds of people who are rational thinkers trying to fight the whole caricature of Bernie Bros and any other political group where there's an extremist in that group who sees someone slight their dear leader and just go off the rails online and create a perfect example of why this person's entire group can be boiled down to one dumb, noisy person. And it was really nice to see that. And I think I've seen a lot more people taking this with a grain of salt and a bit of reason and rationality. And it hasn't turned into a full-on freak out. I think I've seen more people upset with CNN and kind of their biased perspective and the kind of way they drove this in. And so it is not as big of a deal to me personally to see this kind of thing. I think I've seen more people say, I'm not taking the bait. I'm not going to do this. And I honestly think that Warren has been saying she has no comment on the situation on the campaign trail. I heard it 3 times today on NPR. And Sanders had an interview just recently, and he was basically talking about this kind of thing. And he was saying that he didn't outright deny it in such a way, but they were asking him questions, and he was explaining himself in a nice and calm and civil manner, and saying that Warren is a friend and a colleague. And so, like, I think we've gotten past the bait, and I think a lot of people are just concentrating on the campaign, honestly, to pick their candidate or whatever. I think the media is trying as hard as it can, but I don't think it's quite succeeding, because I saw a lot of hate towards CNN after that debate, which is what it should be. If you think the moderators aren't doing a good job, you should be mad at the moderators, not the candidates, which was nice to see. And I'm hoping that carries on for a while.
Yeah, because that was the one thing about that debate that I didn't like, is they asked Sanders, they went to Warren, and they went back and attacked. And it's like, what are you doing? Right? Like, let those two converse. We got to see Biden hash it out how many times with other people. You guys let Biden defend himself. And I'm saying is, I don't think we should give Bernie more time. I would actually be more than happy for them to have the conversation on stage, because if Warren says, this is exactly what you said, and Bernie goes, all right, if that's fair, that's not how I meant that. This is what I meant it. And she says, hey, great. We just mend and move on. Because
I would love that. Oh my God. Yeah. That'd be so nice.
Because the problem here is women have an uphill battle to fight to get into the presidency, period. Women are always, shit on. And Warren is not afraid to call this out. And that's some of the reason I do like Warren quite a bit, is because of the fact that she has, over the last 4 or 5 months, called people out for it. She's like, hey, you want me to tell me I got to look pretty? I got to change my hairstyle. I got to look this way. I got to smile more. Fuck you. You want a president? Do you believe in what I have? On the opposite side of the fence,
I've always liked her too. She's
just been very out there. On the opposite side of the fence, she isn't attracting the same type of base Bernie is. She is attracting more educated people that make more money,
wealthier,
that are voting Democrat. What?
Yeah. Wealthier demographics.
Yes,
sure.
Especially those coming out of college that are getting good, higher paying jobs. The 538 article actually says that 34% of the people considering Warren have household incomes over 125K. Yep. Bernie is not. Bernie's down at 22%.
Yeah,
and I think that's the
Bernie's idea. Bernie's ideas of revolution are a little bit more towards the working class, and Warren's ideas of fixing the system from within, kind of like SLC punk manner of doing things, is her ideas with the CFPB and all those kinds of things. Like, she wants to do stuff within the system. Biden just wants to protect the people who have invested in the system, and Bernie kind of wants to burn the thing and start a brand new garden from there through the ashes. But we'll see. A lot of times people would say, like, there's no way Bernie could ever get completely there. Having a president willing to push that far, we could see what would happen there. And then Buttigieg, in all reality, I mean, he just is a centrist capitalist. And so I honestly don't know if he would add for some more regulation or if he would kind of try to reduce it. But in the end, Warren definitely wants to fight for inside the system, which, that's definitely something that people who have degrees and who have specific areas of work that they're going to be aiming for, Wall Street and the like, they don't want to burn it. They want to be able to create their new loopholes and a new way of making money. And so we'll see if those two bases battle or not. I don't know if they will.
Boyce, we'll give you the last comment here before we move on to another topic.
Well, here's my thing. If Bernie and Elizabeth Warren were actually try to hash that out on stage, they're going to cut the fucking commercial. Let's be real.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna cut to a commercial. And it's gonna be something about the healthcare. It's gonna shit on Medicare for all.
Like that commercial when Bernie said that there was going to be a commercial about the healthcare, and then it flicked right to
And
it.
it was right to it. So they're gonna be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Elizabeth and Bernie. You guys can have this love fest." Back to our sponsors
Yeah.
that plan on destroying your campaign. Like they'll never allow that. They will find a way. As being someone who didn't have a skin in the game on this debate as an Andrew Yang supporter, I watched it with a different point of view this time, and I just watched them frame the questions. All the questions were framed in a way to shit on Bernie. I hate to say it like that. It's just the truth. I watched how they framed it. Like this whole Elizabeth. So since he said that, Elizabeth, like he just said, no, I didn't. I was like, well, fuck him, whatever. Anyway, shut up, Bernie. Since he said it, like the way they framed their questions was showing their bias. They kind of showed their hands a little bit last night as far as they're in the Obama camp, the Obama world. What do they call that shit now? They're calling it. They got a name for it. Where they're out to make sure Bernie's not the candidate. That's what I've seen from my perspective, is just watching the debate and just looking for the framing of the questions and see what kind of response they're looking for and what options of a response do you have with that type of framing.
Yeah.
Just basics.
Fair enough. Yeah. And that's the sad thing is if they take Elizabeth and Warren out of this, I mean, if Bernie doesn't get in, I think it's over for Bernie. At this point, I think he needs to take his hat in, tuck it away, walk away.
He doesn't have 4 more years of waiting to run.
No.
Like he
Whereas
can
I think
endorse
Elizabeth
people.
does, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I definitely think Elizabeth Warren still got 20 years of politics ahead of her.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody wishes they just put her on the Supreme Court, too, to some extent, right? You can only be like, hey, can we have a better progressive? Somebody's got to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
She is a constitutional lawyer.
Yep, exactly. So
That's a good point.
So, like, hey, if we can't get you in, we can at least put you here where you can do a lot of good.
Oh man,
until you die.
That would be so good right now.
Until you die.
Yeah. Pretty much. I think there should be term limits, but whatever.
Oh yeah, Supreme Court should definitely have term limits. They don't represent the perspective of their the current country right now, anyways.
Yeah.
Some of them do. Ruth
that would be a
does.
fun thing. We should do that as a segment in the future.
Hey, there we go. All right. Well, let's move on from that topic. So Hanna has a topic called the war machine. And this is like a two...
Yeah, so it's tied in. I'll just go through. So the beginning of this thing, the war machine, kind of ties it in to the things that were happening last week when we talked about the war with Iran. It's like people are like, what is going on? Why are we even thinking of this as a normal thing that could ever happen? Like, why is this even remotely, like, why are we just shooting missiles everywhere? And the reason, part of it, is that our current Army Secretary, Mark Esper, he is a lobbyist for Raytheon. And Raytheon is one of the 3 biggest arms manufacturers in the entire planet. And like this guy is a direct lobbyist. And in the article that I had on here, this is just something that I was listening to. This is from the July 16, 2019. But they were talking about this in reference to the Iran situation. It's like, why are we pushing towards this? Who's going to benefit the most? As they always say, follow the money. Esper worked for 7 years as Raytheon's top lobbyist before assuming his current role as Army Secretary. When he took the post in 2017, he agreed to recuse himself for 2 years on Raytheon matters, and that agreement expires in November. So he said, hey, I'm totally biased against this. So 2 years, I won't do anything. But now that it's up, and they were like, yeah, but you should still recuse yourself because it's kind of sketchy, You know what I mean? You're in charge of like fighting and things where we need to buy all kinds of guns from a company. And so like there's this weird money thing that's happening here. And that this article is just something that kind of pointed to that for the war machine. But there was just something that I wanted to point to because money is a really, really, really big thing that's happening in here. We look at Boeing and we look at all those other companies. And so going down, that was like the first step into the rabbit hole. And then the second article that is in that we have linked on here is this is one of the best article titles I've ever read in my life. There is definite hanky panky going on.
What?
That's the article. It's from Vanity Fair, which I do really like as far as politics magazine and a location for good long form writing. And this is something that I was reading through in a series of forums. And so there's just 3 quick points that I'm gonna put out these 3 specific scenarios. I put them in our outline for the episode, and they're really simple, but what I want to do is kind of show you the things that are happening as far as money really quickly in our economics system right now. And so in the last 10 minutes of trading in Chicago Mercantile Exchange on Friday, September 13th, someone got very lucky. That's when this group of people or whatever, they sold short 120,000 S&P E-minis. And these are these tiny little contracts for their future contracts. And so we'll probably go into short sales in a little bit. But in the end, what they did was when the index was trading around 3,010, it was 350. New York Stock Exchange closes at 5 o'clock, and it was nearing midnight in Tehran. And a few hours later, drone attacks a large swath of Saudi Arabia oil infrastructure. And so this choked off production. This was sending oil prices up into the air as soon as it was reported. And so someone bought 120,000. They sold them short, saying that the oil was going to drop or increase, depending on how you when you short sell. And this very fortunate trader saw the S&P index drop by 30 points because of that attack. And by having 120,000 of those little minis, they made $180 million profit in a few hours. And then moving on to the next one, on September 11th, the S&P was at 2996, up 30 points. That same day, President Trump said he was postpone the tariffs on Chinese goods. So the S&P index moved up 47 points. Well, that fortunate person bought 82,000 E-minis just before the market closed. And then Trump said what he said. That 47-point movement was worth $2,350 per contract. So that was $190 million contract purchase. So and then another one is these are peanuts compared to the big one. Someone or a group of people bought 420,000 E-minis in the last 30 minutes of trading on June 28th. And that was some 40% of the day's entire trading volume in September E-minis. Okay. And what they did was that's a huge number. But by then, President Trump was in Osaka. Trump was in Osaka, Japan.
Yeah, we got to stop.
We can call him President.
Usually,
Trump.
I'm the one that slurs the speech.
We can call him President Trump if you want. But he was in Osaka, Japan, and someone had bought 420,000 E-minis, so 14 hours ahead of Chicago time. And so they were, buying these from China. And so this is where it gets fishy. It says that he was going to Osaka, Japan, 14 hours ahead of time, and he was going to meet with China's president Xi Jinping and part of the G20 summit. So it says that after the market had closed in Chicago, Trump emerged from his meeting with Xi and announced that the intermittent trade talks were back on track. The following week was a good one for the stock market, and so on Thursday, this index stood at 2915. A week or so later, it was below 3,000, a gain of 84 points. That total is $4,200 per E-mini contract. So whoever bought those 420,000 E-minis just before President Trump made that announcement, like we're talking hours before, they made nearly $1.8 billion. Now,
man, I wish
why?
I had bought that.
So the whole thing I wanted to point to on this is that if you have insider connections somewhere, someplace inside the system. So these are big people. These are people at the top of these major governments, China and Tehran. So we're looking at really big people with good connections, and someone somewhere is passing things around, and people are making really, really, really big winnings on this special insider trading. Now they're spending absolutely ridiculous amounts of money to buy all of these E-minis that they're doing, but with a tiny bit of ahead of time knowledge, small jumps in something like a big S&P index can net you 1.8 billion, 190 million in just a couple hours. And these kinds of things are the things that presidents like President Trump and other dictators and other people around the world used the market to amass wealth for themselves. And one of the things that I think is that the president himself sees his buddies and sees people who he swings with, as we know he loves to hang out in Tehran. We know he loves to go to China, trying to open new places and trying to create connections, and especially places in Russia or whatever. People that are getting really special insider knowledge about something that's going to happen really quickly. They'll buy a huge chunk just before they know either the market's going to swing up or swing down, and they can essentially make a crazy amount of money. Now, these opportunities would never be available to people like us in blue collar or even white collar, middle class, upper middle class, lower middle class. This is one of the things about the market. When people say, "Oh, the market's great," President loves to tout how great the market is, but less than 10% of people in this entire country have like legitimate amounts of money in the market to even see any of that. So
let me stop you for a second.
Yeah,
I just gotta stop you for a second because I gotta ask a question in layman's terms, and maybe it's just the fact that it's so late, but in layman's terms, so what you're saying is everything here that happened is legal, 100% legal, and that what you're saying,
sort of. So like, if it can be proved that you use insider information to make these purchases, then that is illegal. That's why Martha Stewart went to prison. She had friends that gave her information. She knew something was going to go up or down, or she gave out information that would make something go up or down. And those people then made those purchases, or she made purchases or sold shares. So like, if a bankruptcy is going to be announced and you sell everything you got, you're going to make money because those stocks are going to go to the garbage can the moment that is said. So that kind of insider trading is illegal. I don't know how it's regulated from people outside of the United States making purchases inside the United States on these kinds of the markets. But I would say that it's probably illegal, even if you're in a different country, to get special insider trading and buy stocks based on that.
So if it is illegal, right? But what they're doing is not illegal because they are essentially kind of taking this roundabout way about getting this information. Because of the fact that they have a higher status inside of these organizations, and their risk, let's say their risk to reward is very low. So again, for example, if I walk into a casino, my risk to reward is high, or is my risk to yes. I don't know. My risk is very high in that aspect because I could walk in and throw $100 down on a blackjack table and I have a set odds that I'm going to get.
And the house always has better odds than you, no matter what you do.
Yes, exactly. Whereas in this case, these people are saying we always have better odds than the majority of the other people, and we're able to make these things. And again, I'm not saying there was anything illegal that happened because I want to stop that portion of that conversation unless we can prove it. But what you're telling me is the fact that they have access to certain information in some way, shape, or form that is probably not illegal, but should be because they're able to make large profits. And that's how you're able to continue. That's how they're able to continue to trade and build their empire. I mean, I have stocks too, but I don't know any of these things. Like, I don't know half of what's going to happen, but I probably could buy into Blackwater right now. And, if the Iran war was going to happen again, I'd probably make a lot of money. Like if I could buy into Blackwater stocks, I would make a lot of money right now.
So like this, let's say the scenario, the one we talked about with the $1.8 billion situation. So the president and the president of China are about to make an announcement. Someone inside that group between those two parties and administrations told someone else that was going to be a good thing. And those people probably connected to President Xi Jinping because most of the wealth in China is owned by a very small group of people who are considered the board, who are in charge of most of the governing in the country. Like state control, banks, and all those kinds of things control most of the finances in the country. It's one of the things that was recently a surprising opening for another on paper Trump win for the economic thing that he just signed, phase 1 market deal. But what it is so like China not playing by the rules in some way, shape, or form has allowed that information to get out so that someone in their country, a group of people in their country, are getting information about an announcement that the two presidents of the two largest economies in the world are about to make, and they're going to make a killing on that. Like, if that's not illegal, it should be. And I would bet you that somewhere in some world order, world court resolution somewhere, that some people have said, yeah, you can't do that. And so I honestly would say that that's probably is illegal. I don't think we could easily find a court or anybody who would be able to process and prosecute this, because we still don't even have trade deals that are updated to deal with global communications and that kind of thing. So like this, if it happened domestically inside that kind of insider trading, it would be. And since it's global, it's a harder question. But like one of the things is like, these are the kinds of things that when they happen, most people are like, that's in a different world than mine. But like when I hear that, I want politicians who are going to say that's wrong. I want someone to come out and say, no, you can't use special insider information to basically just take billions of dollars out of the U.S. stock market. Because that's what they're doing. They're taking valuation money, because the United States used to do 90% or so of its money would be manufacturing and agriculture, and 10% on financial speculation. That number has switched. Now 90% of the United States financial money, all of it is all tied up in money speculation, stocks and bonds and global marketing and banking, and 10%, 15% is in manufacturing and skilled trades and agriculture and stuff. So like, these are really big, important things that we need to deal with, because if people are going to take the digital wealth that we have in this country, using special manipulations without any kind of protections, that money is going to be coming from our GDP, from the United States itself. It'll reduce the amount of money we have for spending on things like social programs and stuff like that. It's like, it's important to protect your financial infrastructure. And these are huge examples of that being taken advantage of in a way that I've never seen this specifically called out. Like this article, this Vanity Fair article is really detailed, is really, really interesting to see the things that they're talking about, things that they found.
Boyce, you've been very quiet on this whole topic.
Yeah, it's just a more proof of the hypocrisy and the corruption, and just more of the same shit going on, where the elites get to play within a new set of rules that we'll never be aware of most of the time. And these E-minis, who the fuck's ever heard of an E-mini contract? I haven't. And like, okay, what the fuck's an E-mini? But yet here these people are making more than all the like 10% of the wealth of the country is being stolen pretty much in a couple of trades in a week, just with a couple of discussions with Trump overseas. So you're seeing more and more of our national wealth just being trickled up through theft now, which I consider that theft. To say that's like me going to, like you were saying, Chris, playing blackjack, and then there's someone there that I'm not counting the cards, but the guy next to me is counting the cards, and he says, there's actually 4 8s still in that deck, and you need an 8. The odds are 35% that you get an 8.
So you put a big number on there. Yeah, so all your money you got on there.
Yeah, just throw a little something extra on there and make sure that if you get an 8, it's 21, you get a kicker, and you got an ace high, and all this bullshit. They're doing all the numbers for you. They're working the game for you. They're just telling you where to put your bets. So you make the money, because if they did it, they'd be illegal or whatever today in today's environment. But it's just bullshit. They're stealing money from people that are playing within the rules, and they get this whole new set of rules where they're pretty much in bed with Trump or whomever. It might not be Trump. It might be somebody in this party that's just there, a campaigner that's like, hey man, I'm the guy you come to for stocks.
Or
I'm the guy.
The Chinese are telling their buddies that that their president and and the U.S. president have made a deal, and so they get ready to go slam it out just before the market ends. So they got a price. They know exactly what it'll be. All those kinds of things. Like we, as white collar, blue collar, we can't make special little jumps like that. Like you might land on one every once in a while. I already had mine. I bought a house cheap, and I sold it for way more money than I ever thought I would. I will never have that kind of a mass income growth on a single investment. I had a 300% investment in 7 years. It's never going to happen in my lifetime ever again. I've come to terms with that, and I will just have to deal with that. And so like those kinds of things, you can't depend on it when you're a little guy.
But the thing is, you could, if you did it the wrong way, if you knew a realtor that knew this person's going to go bankrupt and I'm going to put it on a market at 0-800 at this day. You're the first person to bid on. You could do it again. You know what I mean? Like that's the bullshit. Like you could manipulate the system to favor you, not make it where you're the winner, but definitely favor you. It's bullshit.
Yeah, if I play by the rules, I'll probably never have that. If I
Right.
cheat, I might be able to find a couple investments like that. Yeah, that's
Right.
like these kind of things, but these are on such a huge scale. Like,
Yeah.
and like you said, you don't know what e-minis are. Do you know what short selling is? That's something I wanted to bring up too.
I sure sold a house and lost my ass. Yeah.
What about you, Tanner? Do you know what short selling is?
If it's short selling your house and getting screwed, yes, I know what that is.
Yeah.
Other than that,
So-
no.
So when you short sell something, it's a thing that they do in real estate a lot. You've seen people doing this against Tesla like crazy. So people, what they'll do is they will go to a trading company who has, millions and billions of dollars in stocks, and they'll say, I'm going to borrow $120,000 worth of stocks from you. And when they borrow those stocks, what they're doing is they're planning on short selling those stocks. And so insofar, they expect those stocks to go down. And so they said, I'm going to borrow these stocks from you. And so they borrow, and then they buy the stocks from the market after those stocks go down. So if they buy $120,000 worth of stocks, or they borrow $120,000 worth of stocks, the company says, okay, you are now in charge of $120,000 worth of these stocks. And you personally are betting that something bad is going to happen to that company. And that $120,000 worth of stock is going to drop down to 90. And then you buy those shares from the company that you borrowed them from at 90. But since you borrowed them for 120, you now get to keep $30,000 of the total money. You only had to spend 90 for $120,000 worth of stuff. So you bet that they would do poorly, and then you would be able to make money on whatever that difference is. That's short selling. So people have been short selling on Tesla like crazy. Every time Tesla misses a deadline, their stocks go down. And so people borrow 50 grand worth of stocks in Tesla, and Tesla misses the deadline, their stocks go down by 20%. And those people who borrowed those shares to short sell, they make 20% on those stocks that they borrowed. And there are a ton of people who short sell. And when like this Iran Contra thing, or this Iran war potentiality thing, a bunch of people could have potentially known that if they would have known that we were going to attack the military leader of Iran, they could have bought a whole bunch of stocks in the S&P E-minis, knowing that there was potentially a war going to happen. What happened the next couple of days after that? Stocks dropped 100, 200 points, pretty much everywhere. S&P 20 or 30 points. But that amount, if you short sell, you get to keep that. You get to keep whatever it drops. And so if you know that that's about to happen, so one of the things they talk about in the economics is that you need to have a way for people to make money on the market going to garbage, and a way for people to make money on the market growing. Because if you don't have that back and forth in both ways, then it won't protect. It won't, like, the economy or the environment won't be normal. And so, like, there are people, if you know bad news is coming, you can short sell. If you know good news is coming, you can purchase. And so no matter what the situation is, if you have that insider information, you can make a ton of money. And like people who are doing this on like major governmental decisions, these kinds of things are confidential. They're not supposed to get out. And that's what irks me, is like, you know what I mean? Like it's like the information systems are just leaking, and then somebody gets to make a ton of money off of that. Like, it'd be different if these people were like, oh man, I think this is going to be a good outcome. I think they're going to announce something. And then they do. Well, then you guessed well. You took a risk and you guessed well. But it just seems like it's cheating, especially on these huge amounts of money.
Yeah, and that would make sense. I mean, I have a client that left the organization, right? He was rather high up, owned a lot of stocks, and it was kind of the same thing. Like when he left, he was told you can't do anything with your stocks for X amount of time, period.
Oh yeah. You can't bet up or down on what you own, because we don't want you. What is it? It's like being a player in the NFL or whatever and betting on your own team. Like some guy just recently was in trouble up.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with that, because, and again, we look at boxing. Boxing is one that a lot of people do that. Hey, you throw the fight, you do this. And in that Witcher game I'm playing, in the Witcher game, I keep getting offered, hey, if you throw this fight, because I need to impress my girlfriend here. And it's like, God damn it, I don't want to throw the fight. I just want to beat your ass. And then come to find out he's like a level 35 and I'm a level 15. And there's no way I'm going to beat him anyway. I should have just thrown the damn fight and taken the money.
I will say that throwing a fight is the premise of one of the greatest movies ever made, Snatch, one of my favorite movies of all time. Guy Ritchie, Brad Pitt, Vinnie Jones, Jason Statham. Oh, that movie is just glorious. And then Guy Ritchie started dating
Yeah.
Madonna, and he lost his ability to make movies. I don't understand what happened there, but yeah, no, like throwing the fight and that kind of stuff, like, you know what I mean? So like that's like the feel. Like people think like the market is like this self-regulating thing that will keep the bad guys out. This is a great example of huge amounts of money that are being swindled in ways that are unethical and not allowable. The meritocracy would not allow this, but it happens because it needs to have the train has to have rails to ride on. If you don't, it'll just slide down the hill, and who knows what'll happen. It's like we have to have regulations on this, and we need a way to globally regulate. Bernie will do that. Warren would do that. I think Yang would do that in a different way than Bernie or Warren, but still, I mean, all of these things, anybody who's got a good idea about regulating this, that would make me feel better.
Well, yeah.
I would agree. So let's wrap the show up, folks. You know, I mean, this is the end of the show. You know, this is amazing. And we were going to talk about this last week the week before, but we just never got to it with all the Iran garbage. And I think this is more important to have the conversation afterwards, right? Because when we had the conversation beforehand, it would be like, well, it's this big, we're sitting here yelling
do we
at
buy
Trump.
or short sell?
Yeah, do we buy or short sell? What do we do with it? And I don't know. It's disgusting, and it's kind of funny because when some of the companies I worked at, it's that conversation of something's going to happen. What do you do? Like if I see the end of something, or I know where something's going to boost because I know investment in there, it's tempting to want to buy stock into some types of organizations. But I know I don't want to do anything illegal. I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to be like Martha Stewart, because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get my own jail cell with a cooking unit inside of it. And
Martha
free
came
pop.
out with more street cred than anybody I've ever seen, man. Even Snoop Dogg was like, she's got this.
I don't know. It is what it is, I guess, folks. But I think it's important to have those conversations. And, I'll try and voice a little bit about Yang's affiliation with Dave Chappelle, because I think it's shit. I think Yang should Yang should own up to the fact that it was a mistake. But, at least Yang is willing to help try and break up some of these, monopolies, right? He's willing to go after, some of these other organizations. And I think Yang's young enough, even if he doesn't get in this time, I think it's extremely important to look at what he's representing, because he could be a 4-year candidate. He could even be somebody's vice president for all we know.
He could be a senator next time around. I guarantee it.
Yeah. I don't know. Boyce, you get last thoughts on my anti-Dave Chappelle hate. And then we're going to wrap it up. We have 2 minutes, buddy.
Kung Fu Yang.
Yeah. No, all I say is I think Andrew Yang has no interest in being a senator. But you never know. He's in the game now. And with people like Dave Chappelle come out and support someone like Andrew Yang has little to no name recognition still, he's a fool to pass it up.
Yeah.
You make the best of it. That's all I can say.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Make the best of it, man.
All right. Well, from those of us at Cellar Door Skeptics, we're here to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We'll be back next week with another episode. And I promise we're going to get back to actually crucifying the candidates. Thank you all so much, and have an amazing night.